MPower Hour. This is our career speaker series. Our hope is that you will be empowered to begin exploring your own career path. In case we've never met, I'm Mrs. Gentine, our experiential learning coordinator for Mason Schools, and my role is to help connect you with experiences like this so you can personalize your career journey. So welcome today to all of our Mason students joining us. Mr. Reuter, our Mason Middle School assistant principal, and I are working together on this virtual series. And Mr. Reuter, would you like to say a few things before I introduce our speaker?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see everybody. Good afternoon. Just a few things as far as etiquette goes with the presentation today. So we're going to ask you to stay on mute during the presentation, which everybody did an awesome job coming in and doing that. So thank you very much. We'll utilize the chat feature in the top right. So top right, there's a box with a couple like lines through it. So as Mr. Wise is presenting, if there's something that sparks an interest, that you have a question, you can drop that into there, and then we'll get to those questions more towards the end of the presentation.
Great, thank you. Well, I think many of you are joining us today because maybe you're considering a career in something business related, or perhaps you have an interest in manufacturing. So you're going to get to meet someone who has meshed a business career in the manufacturing industry. I'm happy to introduce to you our speaker, Kevin Wise. Kevin is the Chief Financial Officer and Vice President of Business Development for a company called MFLUX. Kevin has served our community so well as a Mason City School Board Member for quite a number of years now. He's a parent of Olivia, a current Mason High School student, as well as Mason alum Lauren and Justin Wise. Kevin is also a friend and a neighbor to me, so welcome, Kevin, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Gentine, and I am really thrilled to be here, and I want to thank everyone that's joined. You have to bear with me. I was telling Mr. Reuter that I normally work day to day in these times in Microsoft Teams, so Google Hangout's a little different for me, so I'll try to do our best. I've had several questions ahead of time, so I've tried to build those into what I'm going to share. But if you have other things and you want to put them in the chat window, Mr. Reuter, if you could call those out, or inject at the right time, I'd be happy to address those. So sure. I'm a big fan of all of you, big fan of our Mason Comets, and start with my introduction. I would have to start with my family. I got a picture here, three great kids, two of which have been through Mason, and Olivia's a junior right now, and thankfully helped me get this up and running, which is most appreciated. Normally I'd say hi to her at school, but she's in the next room. That's how we're all living these days. And I'm glad to be able to share a little bit about my background and address some of your questions. Education's been a big part in the Wise family for us. We, Marcia, my wife, and I both attended Purdue University. That's where we met back in the mid 80s when all the great songs were written that are still played today. And then Justin and Lauren both have attended University of Cincinnati. Lauren will be graduating in May. Justin graduated last year in his first year of law school at Ohio State. And then I got a big question mark up there for the last one, because we're all waiting with bated breath on Olivia's choice. She's in the same process that I know a lot of you are in, and looking at a lot of colleges. So we're waiting to see what she picks. From a career standpoint, I've been at Procter and Gamble for 25 years, all of which has been in finance roles, and in various roles around the company. Today, I work in a company called MFLUX, as Mrs. Gentine said. MFLUX is a wholly owned subsidiary of Procter and Gamble. The technology that underlies MFLUX was developed in our R&D labs at Procter and Gamble, and then we've set up MFLUX as a wholly owned standalone company to commercialize that technology. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. I do some other things too. In addition to being a dad and a husband and working at P&G, I'm on the Mason School Board. I have been since before each and every one of you started kindergarten. So I've been thrilled to see the district and be supportive and change during your time here as a Mason Comet. I've been in different roles there. I've been president several times. I have been on our finance committee constantly that whole time, and so got a lot of my training and so forth has been applied both at P&G, but also I want to point out that there's other places that as you all chart your path forward, you'll be able to apply your skills in a lot of different ways, and that's another way I've been able to do it in addition to work. Also, from a nonprofit standpoint, I was a founding board member of a group called One City for Recovery, which is an organization that is trying to fight the battle of addiction and help people toward recovery, primarily heroin addiction and other opioid painkiller problems that people have run into in the last several years. And on that board, I serve as a treasurer. So again, my finance role, I've been able to apply across a couple of different venues. And I think that's important to keep a well-rounded kind of life as you go down your path and build off of what your education is. And I think that something that I wanted to share. At this point, I want to interject the response to a couple of questions that were put out there about finance and accounting and about the education around that and some thoughts I have on the future of finance and accounting. One of the questions was, what's the difference between finance and accounting? That's a very common question that many students, particularly your age, who are considering a path are trying to decide upon. It's pretty simple. Accounting works kind of to make sure that day-to-day transactions are done properly in an organization and to assure that the results are accurately described and that they accurately describe the performance of the business. It's very important to any organization to have accurate results so that the leadership of the company can make accurate decisions. And accounting is that. It's technical. It requires a bachelor's and an undergraduate degree in accounting to work in most large companies, and very important to every company. Finance is a little bit different. It helps to develop strategy. It helps to define choices that a company makes from an investment standpoint. It typically works more on the balance sheet side of a company versus the income statement where the accounting activity is happening. So things like investments in plants, investments in acquisitions or divestitures of an existing part of your company. Are you going to invest in a new piece of equipment or not? How does that build into your strategy? All those investment choices are generally what is more in the scope for finance. Finance and accounting work very closely together because to be good in finance, you need to understand results. And then to be good in accounting, you need to understand what those results are going to be used to do. And so both of those work very close together in just about any organization. From an education standpoint, there is a little difference. Accounting stands a little bit higher. To be an accountant, you generally need to have an undergraduate degree in accounting. So that's what I would encourage from a planning standpoint. And then also you'd want to have typically a CPA or some other certification to help distinguish you in your technical skills. That will help a lot. From a finance standpoint, you can get an undergraduate degree in almost anything, but then you need to be sure to get an MBA. It would be my advice. That MBA is typically a 1 or a 2 year addition to your undergraduate work It's a graduate degree, but it gives you an opportunity to dig into a wide variety of business disciplines, but finance is one of those, and that's probably the best way to really prepare yourself well. And so both of those, as you're preparing in high school, you really just take challenging courses. There really isn't a prerequisites or anything that you need to think about, but I would encourage any extracurricular activities that have a business experience to them. And that business experience could be anything from just learning how to plan meetings, learning how to manage a simple budget. Anything like that is critical. So things like, the Comet Zone or the Comet Savings and Loan are two great examples at Mason. But any organization typically needs some planning and a little bit of budgeting, and all that stuff can be very helpful in your preparation for this career path. There was another question about what do I see the future of finance accounting, and I think it's a great question. I think the best way to think about it is that it's all about decision making, and in the world that we live in, the time frame for decisions is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And even say two generations ago, it would be very common for a company to kind of make annual decisions. You make an annual plan, and then you run that whole plan, and then next year you make a new plan, and you run that whole plan. Well, that's kind of evolved to be quarterly. It's evolved down to be monthly, in some cases daily, but really where we're heading is real time. And so when you think about accounting, usually there's a delay. People could wait for time before the results were in. And what's happening today is that time is compressing. So big data and other skills and software and all that whole part of technology is touching finance and accounting as well. And so preparing for the long term to be effective at that just means you've got to be agile, to understand software, to become comfortable operating in that environment. And that will really set you apart from some of your colleagues who may need more time and may be more comfortable with longer lead times to help leadership make decisions. And I think that's the direction a lot of business is going, but it's certainly also applicable for finance and accounting. How am I doing, Mr. Reuter? Are we good? Is this a good pace?
Yeah, you're great. You're great.
Okay. All right. One of the other questions was about, I think the specific question was, do I need an interest in manufacturing to pursue this path? I had another question about were there mentors that I ran across along the way. So I wanted to kind of blend these two together. I did have a couple of people, and I ran across them during my undergraduate years at Purdue, and two gentlemen who were unrelated, but they gave me the same advice, and that was that it was important to create value by building products. They added on to that in the USA, and comparing that to kind of financial transactions. Many people who are in the finance path in their college years are thinking about investment banking or thinking about banking or other areas. And these conversations I was having with these two guys who were manufacturing executives really was memorable for me, because it really made sense to me that when you build a product, that's a durable long-term value for a consumer. A financial transaction just kind of happens in the moment, and then it's gone. And that's played out over my career for sure. So I think the importance of mentors as you continue your journey is really important. They don't have to be formal mentors. I know there's a lot of mentor programs. I would encourage you just to be on the lookout for people that you want to have a conversation with. And all people that are out there in business are more than happy to engage in questions with students who are trying to choose their path. And as you'll notice, they're very happy to share their advice. And so I'd really encourage you to do that. Doesn't have to be formal. All I encourage you is to have some take some initiative, ask some questions, and then the most important thing is thank them after the fact. They will remember you when you thank them. They may not remember you if you just ask the question, but the thank you part is really important. That's advice for just about everything, but in the case of mentoring, I think that's really important. Another question was about the role of globalization as it relates to manufacturing. And I think today, I mean, we're all working from home right now. Many of our companies are closed, and we're all trying to figure out how to get personal protective equipment for hospitals, medication, testing equipment. And it's become evident to us that that when we have supply chains that extend through other countries, that becomes very difficult to assure that supply once we get into situations like we're in right now. And so we have gone over the last several decades, have moved a lot of our manufacturing overseas and benefited from globalization, the ability to have very diverse supply chains. It's helped on cost structure, and it helps certain countries who have better advantages leverage those advantages. And there's a lot of wisdom in doing that. But as artificial intelligence and software has exploded in lots of areas, manufacturing is one as well, where that's been very evident. And that's really leveling the playing field. And it's allowing for America, that typically has more expensive labor, to be much more competitive than maybe 20 years ago we were relative to, say, China or India. And so, particularly for critical products like food, pharmaceuticals, medical, energy, and so forth, I think we're seeing kind of a trend towards manufacturing being an important part of a national plan. And I do believe that in the next 20 years, as you all begin your careers, we will see a lot of growth in local manufacturing in the U.S., particularly in those critical supply chains that we're feeling today, of course. I had that interest in manufacturing early on, and it's led me to two really important roles in my career development with P&G in manufacturing. One was about 20 years ago in a pharmaceutical plant, in New York, in the state of New York, and it was the launch of a pharmaceutical product that P&G had launched. That was 20 years ago, but today, in the last 6 years, I've been working in a company called MFLUX and helped start that and develop that subsidiary of P&G. As I said, the technology started in P&G labs. And really what we do is we're attempting to transform the future of plastic injection molding. Some of the questions that I had were around sustainability. And really the MFLUX company is built, it has been developed and built with a vision of helping P&G be a leader in a much more sustainable use of plastics. And that's inspiring to me. It's an important vision to have, but it's also allowed us to build a really experienced team that's developed some smart technology to drive efficiency and sustainability solutions for the world's plastic needs. So many of you may hate plastics. Many of you may not want to use plastic straws. Many of you are mortified about what's happening in the oceans and so forth. And so are we at P&G. And at the same time, Procter and Gamble puts a lot of plastic products out into the marketplace. And so we've taken the responsibility to find technology solutions that will help make make that much more sustainable. Two things that we do at P&G, I'm going to switch slides and I'm going to check. Are you seeing the different slide now? Reuter,
No, we're seeing the same slide.
Okay. How about now?
No.
Kevin, are you able to like go off of that, like on that window, off of that presentation, and be able to click onto the second slide? That may let us see it.
Yeah, that's just what I did, and I was hoping that that would do the trick. Let me do one thing here. All right. So now you see no presentation?
Correct.
Just see you, correct.
All right. Let me try.
And while you're trying to bring that up, we did get a question, and what do you enjoy most about your job? Oh, dude. Right now, Kevin, you're muted. Your mic is muted.
All right. How about now?
There we go.
Okay. So now
we did get.
This slide.
Okay, now just present that.
Yeah, but I don't think I'm sharing.
Go back to the thing. Present now.
Yeah.
And then do what you just did.
We did get a question, Kevin, that maybe you can address. Question was, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Good. So that's an easy one. I enjoy the most developing teams and building into people. I've found over the years it's the most important thing about creating value in a company is having a strong team. A lot of people will go right to what you put down on paper as your idea, and that's important too. But building teams is definitely my favorite part of my role. So now I'm going to check to see, do you see that second slide now?
Yeah, with Millicron. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So MFLUX does a couple of things. We build a software control system that goes on to today's injection molding machines that makes that injection molding machine work differently. And then the second thing we do, and you can see here, one of my colleagues here is standing in between a mold, an injection mold. And can you see this here?
Yeah, we can see them.
So an injection mold, this is an injection mold that makes the caps that go on top of many of these P&G products here. And we make these it takes about 5 seconds to make 48 of these caps at a time. And so you can imagine, a product like Downy that you see on the shelf quite a bit, or Tide Pods, these lids that are on there are a big part of the plastic supply chain. And it's very important for P&G to make those efficiently so that we can have the right pricing on the shelf. But it's also important that we want to include in those parts a component of recycled materials so that we can have a solution for taking the mountains of plastic that's out in the world and give it a second use or a third use or a fourth use. And so our software makes an injection molding machine able to process recycled resin much more efficiently. So if you take a bunch of these different caps and you grind them up and you create a new supply of plastic, our software lets those injection molding machines process that plastic into new caps or other products. And that's something that's proprietary to the MFLUX technology, but it's really something that the industry has struggled with, because you can imagine when you're making 48 of these caps in 5 seconds, they all have to screw on properly. You can imagine that you need a very stable stream of plastic coming into that process. Otherwise, dealing with the impurities and dealing with the variation in specification, different parts in there. There's water, there's other kinds of plastic, there might be even wood or metal and other things. Those are all the challenges to be able to make parts and give them a new life from a recycled stream. And so that's what MFLUX does. Has a big application to Procter and Gamble, of course, but we also do that. The reason we set up as our standalone company is we also sell that technology to the rest of the world. We felt it was important not just to hoard that intellectual property and just use it for our own products, but we're making that possible for other industries as well. The automotive industry, we make pallets that moves material around through particularly the food and wholesale supply chains. We make automotive components that go into car making and other things. And so that's what we do at MFLUX. One of the questions was, what are the kind of roles at MFLUX? And we have about 120 people in our company. And although we're owned by P&G, we operate very independently. We've hired a different type of group of people than typically are hired into Procter and Gamble. We have software engineers, we have material scientists, we have manufacturing engineers, we have skilled machine operators, we have program managers that work with our customers, and then we have kind of your traditional IT, F&A, and HR. We've had a chance to employ a 2016 graduate from Mason as an intern, Cameron Burns. He was a software engineer for us last summer and had an opportunity to help design that software system that makes it possible to process the recycled resin. He's I think he's a junior or maybe a senior now at Alabama in computer science, and his focus area in his undergraduate is in kind of astronomy and managing satellites and all the software that figures out how to detect the exact location of satellites at any given time to help stream data back and forth and so forth. So he was terrific for us. He really did a nice job, and it was glad to have a Mason Comet as part of our team last year. And then also Natalie Sears did a short internship with us through Mrs. Gentine's program in HR. So she helped with some of our hiring, developed some of our training materials for our customers, helped put together some employee events, and we were really glad to have Natalie as part of the team as well. So we're always looking for good students who have interest in manufacturing, particularly one that overlaps with an interest in sustainability and a bit of a passion for that. And so that's a little bit about MFLUX. I would. Are there any other questions that have come in, Mr. Reuter?
Not right now. There's nothing that's popped in.
Okay. So I'm going to attempt. Now, do you see a new slide? Same slide.
Same slide. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I want to pause here and try to address a couple of the questions that were sent in ahead of time. One of the questions was, what have we done as look different during this pandemic? And I think every company in the world, particularly in the U.S., is dealing with this challenge right now. Many people have heard the term essential business, and MFLUX is categorized as an essential business. We are continue to make molds every day for cleaning products and healthcare products. We make some of the components for the Vicks NyQuil, which is a cold and flu product that's always on the shelf every flu season. That'll be an important product this year. All that manufacturing is underway now to be ready for the next flu season. But things look a lot different, even though we're in an essential business right now. For the guys in our team that are in the shop, actually continuing with operations, every day when they come in, they have their temperature checked. They all wear face masks and gloves. We've changed around the work environment to allow for spacing between our machines that we operate. And we do a lot more cleaning every day to make sure that our surfaces are clean. Most of our team is working from home. Our sales group, our F&A, our IT, our program management, our R&D group, many of our engineers are working from home. And so we've all had to get, up to speed on this kind of virtual communication. And that's been what we've been up to. I think the other question is what's the biggest priorities that you're dealing with during the pandemic? And I think one of them is dealing with the mental health of your team. I said one of my favorite things is in building teams. Well, once you understand how important an effective team is to being successful in business or in any activity, you want to take care of them. And as it's no different than in our schools right now. We have teachers that are working with each of you and probably off their camera a little bit. They have their own kids that they're trying to help with their classwork, connecting with their teachers, and our employees are doing the same thing at home while they're trying to continue to maintain their responsibilities at work, and that takes a toll. And so we've been trying to do a lot of things to keep people connected and to work with and develop them during this time and be supportive and make sure that the mental health of our team is just as healthy as the performance of our team. And so that's a little bit about what we've been doing as a company. We are proud. In late March, we added to our manufacturing work and applied our technology to building face shields. As you've probably seen a lot of press about the need for personal protective equipment. Certainly, masks are an important part of that, but face shields are an important part too. And those face shields are plastic, and today, and there's a big shortage. Our health professionals go through them very quickly, and so we had built a mold, and we redirected one of our injection molding machines to actually go into production to produce these face shields. We started last week, and we're producing 20,000 of these shields per day out of our facility. Our facility is over in it's near Jungle Gyms over in Fairfield, and we're supplying those face shields to the Cleveland Clinic and to Cincinnati Children's Hospital right now. But with our capacity that we've created, we're also trying to figure out how to supply the federal government for their safety stock of this kind of equipment, and we're going to be working on that. We're also we've also built two molds that are going to be making start next week making the plastic part of a test swab that's used in a COVID for a COVID test. Those are in great shortage. The swabs have to be a certain length to work properly, and they are plastic. And so we we designed a mold and built it. We're going to be making nearly 100,000 of those parts per day in the next week or so with a partner. And so our team is incredibly proud of being able to, in addition to our current work, to do that work as well. And that's really been probably a center center focus for during this pandemic. So that's really what I had from a prepared comments. I tried to address many of the questions that were pre-given. And anything else, Mr. Reuter, that's come in?
We just got a question. It was, what kind of internships does your company have to offer?
Yeah. So we can be very flexible for a person who's got interest in, but generally it's been in the software side or in the kind of administrative part of our business. A lot of people, when they think of manufacturing, they don't think of software, but my comments earlier about how important that work is to the efficiency of manufacturing, it's that's a very key part of our work, whether it's the software to design a mold that's needed to make a plastic part, or whether it's the software that's the underpinning of the proprietary system that we sell that lets injection molding machines process that recycled material. Those would be the two primary areas, but if somebody has a specific interest in manufacturing and machine operation, we certainly have those opportunities as well. We can also handle shadowing or other things on a shorter term basis if somebody just wants to get kind of a short term experience, in our facility. So Mrs. Gentine certainly knows how to get a hold of me, and if somebody wants to talk about that, we'd be more than happy to discuss that.
We just got another one. How did you decide that this was the kind of career you wanted to pursue?
I think that when I was started in my undergraduate work at Purdue, I wanted to be more in the investment. I had an interest in being more an investment banker, a stockbroker, something like that. And I think really I had a summer job in manufacturing for one of the gentlemen I talked about earlier, and they manufactured motor controls, and I felt good being in an environment where something was being made. And I've always enjoyed the people since then that are in the manufacturing world, and so I think the manufacturing pathway was really kind of solidified probably my junior year in my undergraduate during an internship. My sophomore year, I worked at the Chicago Board of Trade in the grain pits as a runner, probably the lowest level job anyone could have. It was an absolute blast to live in Chicago for the summer. I'm a big Chicago Cubs fan, and so getting to go to Cubs games and all that was a blast. But I just felt the next summer it was also outside one of the suburbs of Chicago, and that's really where that interest in manufacturing, I think, was first formed. And so I've tried to follow it ever since.
Debbie, do you want to kind of close things up here?
Sure.
I have a couple. I have three more things, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
My daughters would not believe I ever gave a talk if it wasn't just a little bit of advice. So, Debbie, if you give me just a second.
Absolutely.
These are just a few things for you to think about. The first is I just want to say, the more you gossip about other people, the more others gossip about you. That has been a constant thing in my entire career. And people will come not to trust you. So my advice is, don't gossip, and soon others will trust you implicitly. I think that will always work in all cases, and I just encourage all of you to think about that as you go down your path through college and selecting your career. The second thing is, get in the habit of and look forward to doing more than you are paid for. you will quickly be paid much more than others for the same work. So get in the habit of and look forward to doing more than you're paid for. That means coming a little bit early to work, leaving a little bit late, looking for things to volunteer for in any organization you're part of. Don't ask for additional pay for that. It's even things like be the last one to clean up after an event in high school. Why does that work? It works because that's where you meet people, and that's where people see your work ethic. It pays off 100 times more than if you were paid a few extra dollars to do those activities. So get in the habit of doing more than you're paid for. The best one I know is that life is a marathon. Enjoy each mile that you're on. Don't give up. Thank people you travel along with, and do that all the time. And that will keep you going when you're down, and that will keep others excited to work with you throughout your whole career. So in the spirit of that, I'll just say thank you for letting me be a part of this with you all today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. That was awesome. And I love the life lessons at the end. You actually talked about a lot of those and incorporated them throughout your presentation today. You started off talking about your role, your different roles in life as a husband and a father, and different ways that you volunteered. And I think that shows our students that just being a well-rounded, happy person in life is just as important as seeking a particular degree or position. So I love the way you started that off. As Mr. Wise mentioned, experiences will really shape you. It will help you decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do, but all those experiences are valuable. So get involved in different volunteer organizations, internships, etc. The mentoring and the thank you really stood out today. Listening to advice from other people that you can trust is so important. They will be able to point out your strengths and help you, navigate this career path as you go along. And then thanking those mentors. This is a great time to take some of this extra time that you have, or the time that looks a little different, and just write a thank you note or an email to someone, just thanking them for their investment. It goes a long way, and it will make that person feel valued. And I always tell students after they've interviewed the importance of a thank you note, and it's almost a lost art today. But it's very, very important to just craft a few words and send your expression of thanks to someone. So I'm really glad you brought that up today as well. Students, any additional questions before we end our session? Doesn't look like any. You did a great job of touching on all of them that were presented ahead of time, and we really appreciate your time today.
All right. Mrs. Gentile, thank you. Mr. Reuter, thank you. And good luck to all of you as we head through the last month and a half here of school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.